Hi there everybody. Well, it's a bright day out there today. In fact, weather forecasts in our area, they've just got it totally wrong. They were talking about wind and rain straight after the Easter weekend, well, starting off on Monday, but it hasn't, it's got cooler, but it's certainly not bad weather we're having at the moment. It's pretty good. And yeah, clear skies again today over Chesterfield, and when you're in the sun it's quite warm. There's still a bit of a, when the breeze does come, you get a bit of a chill in the air then, but good weather. Anyway, I wanted to touch base on conceptual ideas and thinking in the UK market, and where and how the market is likely to go. It seems to be clear now that when it comes to the disease, we're going to continue with quite a few precautionary measures in public locations. So the standing 2 meters apart at all times, and not going into gatherings, and basic issues like that are going to put a certain amount of pressure on our lives in terms of how we go about normal business, because that is, to get back to normality with that type of arrangement is difficult. It's difficult for retailers, it's difficult for restaurants and pubs, it's difficult for factories in certain cases. It's even difficult for schools. So they talk about schools going back. Well, schools to me are still a bit of a problem then, because it's all very well adults keeping 6 meters apart if they go out, but if that doesn't apply to kids as well, kids are likely to be then carriers of the virus, so they'll come home and just give it to whoever's at home. I think sort of the more vulnerable people and people of an older age will have to remain isolated to protect them from this current scenario, and that's going to be ongoing. I can't see that changing for at least 18 months, or until we have a vaccine. There's also the very strong likelihood that when we do drop the measures of safeguarding in some of these areas, that we will get a spike in the disease again hitting us, and more hospitalisation, so obviously more deaths as well. The key is how many more will that be in conjunction with the balance of the work. Unfortunately, that's the situation we're in. We obviously, there are people dying every day, as there are babies being born every day. But it's a question of how much our lifestyles will inflate that death rate if we don't keep certain shields in place to protect us in that area. And that is what the scientists are trying to work out at the moment. Today we're going to get an announcement from the government as far as how long we go with our lockdown. I think it's likely we're going to go into May with the lockdown, probably the end of May even, but certainly mid-May, I would think. And then when we release the lockdown, we're not going to be totally isolated. We're going to still have to keep our distances and things like that. That's without doubt, that's going to be the case. So what business arrangements do we make going forward in a plan like this? Well, unless yes, I know it's easy to say, well, everyone should just work at home, which is okay for some of us and not so easy for others. The retailers have got to look at ways of bringing, I think, an interesting balance of what they can do. It's difficult for them because when you're a core retailer, I'm talking about someone who sells food. Sorry, this is before I talk about that. It was interesting what I heard in the retailers in Italy. They're starting to open up certain retail outlets now. The cafes and restaurants are still closed, but what they've allowed, and it made me chuckle a little bit, is they're opening up bookshops, stationers, and babywear shops. Now I thought to myself, yeah, but most people who have a bookshop or a stationers, they will tend to be positioning themselves on the back of convenience outlets. In other words, they'll be in proximity to a draw card. They will be positioned where there's a lot of traffic going past, so they'll go into the stationery shop or they'll go into the bookshop, to become a purposeful destination selling stationery. Most of the small stationery shops aren't going to be in a position to do that. Yeah, big ones are. The Staples type business, yes, possibly, but not the small stationers, not the small bookshops, independent bookshops. And they rely on traffic in the streets to pull them in to actually purchase goods. Not so easy to become a destination when you're a small retailer like that. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough, and I think the same is going to happen in this country as well. Exactly the same thing. If they say they're going to open only certain businesses, I think it'll be very difficult to select which ones to open, which selected manufacturers, which ones to open. It's going to spread the disease. I mean, you have people working together side by side, and in proximity and touching and eating and going. It will get to a point where the spike will come back again, no doubt about that. And the question is how we balance that and get it right. Now, to counterbalance that, on the economic side for the UK, we've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer made the statement yesterday that if we don't get back to normal by June, we are going to shrink our economy by at least 1/3, which is going to mean at least 2 million people unemployed, among quite a lot of other things. So we're in this very difficult situation here of how to bring ourselves out of our current lockdown into a world of where we can get business of sorts up and running again, and obviously maintain the virus and the disease at a controlled level. We know we're going to have people catch it, but it's keeping it at a controlled level, an acceptable level, until we get a vaccine. So that's the thought process that needs to be applied by business in how we go forward. It makes logical sense to me that fewer people are going to want, with the current dilemma of health and life, they're not going to want to get into crowds. So unless restaurants and pubs and retailers can come up with a mechanism to keep people to some degree segregated, they're not going to be able to open. It's not going to work. Certainly not in the current formats we have. So the retailers, the food retailers that have started this process of shopping and allowing people, they've got people on doors, they're putting grids on the floor, so people have got to remain 2 meters apart from each other in a store. You have to follow the store around a certain route. There's people on the door, so you queue up outside the store 2 meters apart, and you're allowed in. As somebody comes out, somebody else is allowed in. I mean, that's working to a degree, and if that becomes the norm of how we're going to shop, you're going to have to give yourself a lot more time to get shopping done. You're also still at risk, in my view, especially in the larger operations, because you still end up in a situation where you're mixing in a store. This issue of micro droplets, which I've spoken about before, is definitely going to be a risk in those sort of environments. And I think the question is, they're probably a major area now where the disease is spreading as we sit now even. So I don't know if that is the answer. So deliveries has got to be the answer. Product being delivered to the home in a more convenient way, possibly through, as it's done at the moment, online business, but probably more in a flexible way as well. And that's an area I've been looking at in the UK currently, which I'll talk more about in detail when I've got the presentation package completed. It all depends, because what the other point to note in the UK market, of course, is yes, there will be fewer jobs if we end up with a situation with 2 million people unemployed. There'll be more businesses not starting again. There will be less money in the market to purchase, so there'll be less money around. So the pot will be a lot smaller. So you've got to consider that factor as well in any business. Whatever you were doing before, you've got to look at, well, I've got to take at least a third of what I was doing before off my trading projections going forward, because they're not going to be the same. Certainly not in the next 12 months, for sure. And probably longer, probably 2 years. Things have to change, therefore. And I'm talking and engaging with as many people as I can about the potential opportunities in embracing changes in the market that can work and work effectively, and bring people on board that are also cost effective and beneficial to society as a whole. Okay, I was going to give you another bookshelf presentation today, but as it's quite late in the day now, I'm going to do that tomorrow. I won't do that today. All right, talk to you again soon. Bye bye.